Joining me now, Chuka Umunna, Labour MP for Streatham, chair of the Vote Leave Watch campaign, and Jonathan Isaby, editor of Brexit Central. And Chuka Umunna, if I start with you, Brexit, clearly the major part of the Queen's speech, and isn't that understandable, given, and it's quite clear, there's a huge amount of work to come in the next 2 years?
Absolutely. I mean, I think 8 of the 24 bills that will be presented will touch on Brexit, and it's going to have a fundamental impact on the lives of all your viewers, not just from the point of view of people's jobs and livelihoods, but the extent to which we can continue to advance social justice with our European counterparts, being part of the single market. I am arguing for that. But I don't think it was just a kind of Brexit Queen's speech, because there's a huge domestic policy agenda beyond Brexit. Look, we have one of the biggest gaps between the rich and the poor in the advanced world. We've got millions of people in work living in poverty. We've got people can't access the basics, affordable housing to rent and to buy. So that is also going to be a focus of Parliament going forward. But one of the exciting things, I think, is that this could be a golden age for Parliament because of the parliamentary arithmetic in that place. We've got a minority government for the first time in years. Every single vote in the House of Commons is going to count, and the vote of every single MP is going to count in a way that it didn't in the last Parliament. So we as individual members of Parliament have an influence that we didn't have in previous Parliaments, and that is a good thing. We can't just have the executive and Theresa May a kind of really diminished Prime Minister determining everything from number 10. The legislature now will get a role, but maybe it didn't have before.
Jonathan, is that a good thing? Because obviously Theresa May went to the polls on the basis that she would then have a mandate for Brexit. She needed the strength for these negotiations. She hasn't got it.
There is a mandate for Brexit if you look at both the Conservative and Labour Party manifestos and indeed the UKIP manifesto, which 85% of people voted for at the election just the other week. There was a mandate for coming out of the single market, coming out of the customs union and taking back control over all those areas. Chuka talks about a golden age of Parliament. There will be a golden age of Parliament when once again the people in the building behind us are voting on British laws. For far too long there have been people sitting in Brussels who've been deciding our destiny in this country, and this Queen's speech has got a whole range of measures which bring back control over immigration, over agriculture, over fisheries and a whole lot more besides back to this building.
Look, this idea that there was this grand mandate to leave in a way that destroys people's jobs, that reduces social justice.
Well, that's your take on it. There was a vote, and there was a vote to leave.
There was a vote to leave the European Union, but how you do that is up for debate and should be tested. This idea that somehow people voted to just jump off a cliff and not do a deal with the European Union, well, that has completely been run roughshod through by the general election result, because clearly people, I don't think, wanted that. And the idea that people wanted to leave in a way that cuts all the economic ties, all the benefits that we have in the European Union away, when actually there are other countries who are not in the European Union, like Norway, that's a member of the single market, or Turkey, that's a member of the customs union.
What's your evidence for saying that, when all your colleagues are saying that all that they heard on the doorsteps during the election campaign was domestic matters? It was housing, it was austerity, it was the NHS.
But they're all connected, though, in my view, because if you look at all of what we know leaving, say, the single market involves, that will have an immediate hit on the revenues to the exchequer, the tax take, which will massively compromise a future Labour government that I want to see its ability to end years of Tory austerity. But also, there's another dimension to this, is the domestic policy agenda touches on things like employment law, like environmental protections, consumer protections. That is at the heart of what the single market has been all about. And one of the things, if you just let me finish the point, by all means, but one of the challenges we have is you've got big multinational companies that operate across borders, challenging those things, trying to resist the protections that people have. So it makes sense for us in this UK Parliament and the government to work with other countries to ensure that we get the best protections and best things for our people.
All those protections that Chuka talks about, workers' rights, environment protections and so on, are things which are going to be put into British law on the day that Brexit happens through the Repeal Bill, which was announced in the Queen's speech just this morning. And then you, as British politicians, can decide whether to keep them or not. And clearly there seems to be a consensus of keeping them because the government has said they want to and you said you want to. It's about taking back control, though. Chuka says he wants us to stay in the single market. If we stay in the single market, we are bound by rules of freedom of movement, something which the EU has made clear is absolutely sacrosanct. We would not be able to have control of our borders if we stay in the single market.
A clean break is
let me say a couple of things about that. On freedom of movement, there's a huge myth that is built that somehow freedom of movement is unconditional. It isn't, it's conditional. So at the moment, as full members of the European Union, if we want to require people to leave this country after they've been here for 3 months and haven't got work and don't have the prospect of work, we can do that, but we choose not to. So we can actually gain more control over our immigration policy now as full members of the European Union. And the second thing is, look, the idea that all the laws here determine everything that impacts on people is ridiculous. We operate in a global economy. Globalization is a phenomenon that's knocking people around. And the best way we can marshal those forces and try and get them to go in a more socially just direction is working by others around the globe. And the best motor for us to do that has been the European Union. So, look, I accept we're leaving.
Aren't you?
I voted for Article 50,
Will you
and
vote
I voted
for the
to
repeal
trigger it.
bill, which revokes the European Communities Act 1972?
Well, look, it depends.
Because if you don't, people
Just
will
a
say,
moment.
how can you say you're
Just a
accepting the
moment.
result?
It depends what's in it. I'm not going to give a blank cheque to Theresa May and Tory ministers like Priti Patel and others who've talked about doing away with people's rights at work, doing away with different protections.
The government haven't said
yes,
that.
they have. They have said that. Cabinet ministers have said that. They're on the record saying that. So am I going to give those people a blank cheque to run roughshod over the rights of my
Then it's a
constituents?
matter for Parliament to make those
Absolutely
decisions.
not.
The question was, will you fight the...
I agree that Parliament should, of course, be the
Will you
primary
fight
motor
the
on
Great
this.
Repeal Bill? Will you say we're against?
Well, I don't actually know what's going to be in it. So you're asking me, will I fight something? I don't know what the
It's
contents are going to be.
If it's about just transferring powers from the European Union into British law...
If that is all it is, but we don't know. And in the end, the rubber will hit the road when all these different bills, which make up the Queen's speech, are debated on the floor of the House of Commons. And then I'm happy I can answer something. I can answer a question then, because I know what I'm talking about. At the moment, I don't know what's going to be in that Great Repeal Bill.
Simon, this time last year, 17.4 million people voted for us to leave the European Union. More people who voted Tory, more people than voted Labour last week. And if politicians in the building behind us don't vote for the repeal bill, they will say, how can you claim you are accepting the result, which was delivered so clearly just a year ago?
And what is the Labour approach going to be in the coming week in terms of the debate on... Are you sensing blood and therefore you're going to be bloody? You're going to make life as difficult as possible for this government?
Look, we will act by reference to our values and what we believe as a party, and we want to create a fairer, more equal society. We're too unequal. If you are of a particular background, you certainly don't have the opportunities of others of a more wealthy background. And so we will be guided by our principles and what we believe in terms of how we decide to vote on the different laws that come before us. So this isn't a game-playing thing. This is about people's lives, and that's what we'll be guided by.
Last word from Jonathan. In terms of Brexit, here we are. This is the moment things start to actually move, is it?
Yeah, this is an incredibly important moment. The referendum was a year ago. Obviously, the government has spent the last year preparing for the negotiations which started just this week, and now this all-important legislation is on the table to be debated by parliamentarians over the coming 2 years in order to ensure that there is a clean and orderly withdrawal in 2 years' time, which is why that repeal bill is so important.
Gentlemen, we could go on for a lot more. I suspect you two might. But anyway, Chuka, Jonathan, thank you both very much for coming. Thank you.